It's never too early to start thinking about who's going to win the next national championship. On today's edition of SEC Football Unfiltered, our podcast from the USA Today Network, John Adams and I will try to gaze into our crystal ball and see if we can predict who the next national champion will be. Blake Toppmeyer with you as always. John, I don't know that you and I would have picked Indiana to win the national championship if we would have had a dozen picks this time next year. So as we begin a draft to try to draft next year's national champion, do you think a dozen picks will be enough?
I think you're misremembering that. I have here
okay.
in my notes, John and Blake pick Indiana number 1.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah,
glad you remembered that because I had
yeah, I
forgotten.
did. I just made it. I try to keep my memory's not that great, but I try to write things down, and it's right there in the notebook. I won't show it, but it's there. Trust me.
Beautiful. All right. Well, here's how we're going to do things. We're going to do this snake draft style, and we're each going to draft 6 teams in an attempt to pick the national champion for this upcoming season. Nobody can draft a team once they're off the board. So if John takes somebody, I cannot take them, and vice versa. And John, you have been selected with the first pick. So you will get the first pick here in our draft to try to pick the 2026 season national champion.
This is very exciting, Blake, but I'll try and
Oh,
maintain. Yeah, I'm pretty fired up about this, but I'll try to maintain my composure, stay in the present, and make good choices. So I get the first pick. I'll take Texas number 1.
any explanation needed for this?
Yeah, I thought it really helped itself in the transfer portal, getting 2 running backs, Raleek Brown and Hollywood Smothers, getting Cam Coleman, an elite wide receiver from Auburn that everybody was after. I mean, we know Texas has the money, so if you're competing for Texas for transfers, you better bring a lot of cash to the table. And I really thought Arch Manning became kind of what we thought he would be late in the year. Uh, so I think Texas. And what they have plenty of now money. So I would think in the lines and so forth they will be okay, even though they're losing some players. So I do like Texas.
My only concern with Texas would be they have Ohio State on the schedule once again. Now, this time it's in Austin, so they have that going for them. But, if we think about it, the biggest thing keeping Texas out of the playoff this past year was that loss in the swamp. Texas had 3 top 15 wins on the resume, but they had the 3 losses. And the big one was to a bad Florida team, a Florida team that finished with a losing record. They beat Texas, and so I think that was, it was a red flag on the resume for Texas. But if they hadn't lost to Ohio State, say they'd scheduled some cream puff and the non-conference portion of the schedule, it very well could have been 10-2 and in the playoff. And so I'm with you. I think Texas is probably the SEC's best bet for a national champion. My only hesitance in taking them, which I didn't have to, you took them, would be that week 2 game against Texas. And if they lose that one, are they on their way to another 9-3 record that has them on the outside looking in?
Well, they had that huge win at the end of the year against Texas A&M, an previously unbeaten A&M team. But when I look at the schedule, I do see a couple of pitfalls, aside from the possibility of losing at home to Ohio State. I mean, that's a chance of that. But they play at LSU and at Texas A&M. I think those will be big challenges, but 10-2, I think we can say with that schedule, 10-2 gets you in. So win win one of those 3, and you should be in the playoffs, and then hope you're healthy and ready to make a run for the championship.
All right, so I get the next 2 picks, John, in our snake draft here, and I'm kind of
That's why you gave me the first pick.
Yeah, clever,
I'm
huh?
so slow to catch on to stuff. I was thinking, that's really nice to me. Nice of Blake to do that. Probably just because I'm an older person and he just is being respectful. Then it hit me. No, he thought that would be advantageous to Blake, and he
Sure, absolutely.
proceeded accordingly. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
don't worry about it too much. You'll have the next two picks after me, after I've taken the next two best teams off the board. But no, I'm actually I'm torn here. Like, do I just take the two best teams available? Do I try to predict who I think you're going to take next? Let's not overthink it. It's a football
No,
podcast in,
please.
in February.
No.
Okay, so I'm not going to overthink it, and I'm going to take Ohio State because I feel like Ohio State, in so much as any school is sort of a lock for the 12-team playoff, I think Ohio State's generally viewed as a lock because you always know they're going to have one of the best rosters in the country. And even though the Big Ten has produced three national champions in a row, we tend to think it's a little bit easier if you're part of the Big Ten's upper crust to advance to the playoff. And so I think Ohio State will be in the playoff despite the fact that they do have a very tough schedule this year. The schedule's not really doing them any favors. I mentioned that road game at Texas. They're also on the road at Indiana. They're on the road at USC. They have Oregon at home. They have Michigan at home. I'm almost talking myself out of this, but I think they can get to the playoff at least at 10-2. As I said, we always know Ohio State's going to have one of the most talented rosters in the country. They'll have quarterback Julian Sayin back. He wilted in the Big Ten championship and a little bit in the playoff, but for most of the season, he was really good as a redshirt freshman starter. Now he'll be a sophomore. So I feel like I got to go with maybe the best team available here, and I think that's probably Ohio State. And then next, John, I'm going with Notre Dame. Notre Dame, the team that obviously missed the playoff this season. Much ado about that. Complained, didn't play in a bowl game because they were so upset that they did not get selected for the playoff. But as I look ahead toward next season, I see a team with CJ Carr, the quarterback, back in the fold. I see a schedule that is fairly accommodating. I mean, they have Miami at home, they have BYU on the road, they have SMU at home, and the rest of the schedules sets up really nicely. So, I think Notre Dame being independent can sort of call their shots and scheduling, and really what they've done is craft schedules that set them up to make the playoff year in and year out. I think they're going to have really good team with CJ Carr in the middle of it. So there we have it. Ohio State and Notre Dame. Your rebuttals.
Well, no, I don't have a problem with either one of those picks. Ohio State, to me, I think when we look at teams now, we don't look at how many starters a team has returning or what its record was. We look at it, through a prism of what's what kind of NIL payroll can they afford? And we know Texas can afford anything. We know Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State can take Alabama's best player away anytime. So those are, to me, obvious picks. We can go ahead and pick them for 2027 also if you want.
That's right. I mean, yeah, you're right. We could do this draft 5 years from now, and I feel like Texas and Ohio State and Notre Dame all are going to come off the board within the first three picks. Maybe not the first three picks, but within probably the first 6 or 7 picks. I think those three schools are probably coming off pretty quickly. So no real surprises so far, I would say. John, you get the next two.
Okay. I want to take Indiana, but Indiana just went 16-0 and lost one fumble all season and maybe dropped one pass. I just don't think things can work out that well, no matter how great a coach Kurt Signetti is. I just don't see a repeat. I think it's too hard. So I'm going to take a little bit of a chance here and take Miami. Miami lost heavily on defense, but gosh, get Darian Mensah, Duke's quarterback. I really like him. That guy can make plays. Already, that's a quarterback upgrade over Carson Beck, who I thought did fine in the playoffs, better than he had previously. I thought he controlled the game well, didn't make horrible mistakes. I don't blame him too much for that last interception. It was kind of desperation time. But to have Mensa, Mark Fletcher, who was just, I thought, I didn't realize he was that good until I watched him in the playoffs, and he was outstanding. And I think Malachi Tony, am I pronouncing his first
Yeah,
name correct?
Malachi Tony.
Malachi.
Yeah.
Okay. I get him confused with the receiver from Southern Cal. Is it Lemon? Is his last name?
Yeah, Mackay Lemon. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you've turned Malachi and Mackay into Malachi. We
One of
need
those.
more John Smiths for you to get through this podcast,
I
John.
know, or John Adams is Tony. I thought that was in the open field. That was the hardest guy I saw to tackle all year. My gosh, he
Mhm.
gets the open field, and I thought, here he goes. Nobody's getting him. And so those are three huge playmakers. So I'm going to take Miami, and then I'm going with LSU, which Lane Kiffin added over 40 players in the transfer portal. He got his quarterback from Arizona State. He added 9 receivers. He's kind of building this team the way he built Ole Miss in the portal, heavy on with receivers, excuse me, getting good quarterbacks. Uh, LSU was a huge disappointment. And admittedly, I picked LSU to win it all last year. I was just kidding, though.
I wasn't going to remind you of that, John. I was
No,
going to
no,
let
I
it
was
slide.
kidding about that. Sometimes, you talk about people in leadership roles and they often criticize. They're saying, "Oh, he's no visionary." They'll say he's just a bureaucrat. He's no visionary. He can't think far ahead. I think what I was doing last year in 25, I was looking ahead to 26
Ooh,
when I
yeah,
picked
you were ahead of your
LSU.
time. You were
Yeah,
ahead of your time. That's what it is.
yes, playing chess, as you would say. Yeah, anticipating things and so forth. So yeah, Miami, LSU, boy, Texas, man, I've got some really good teams there. Okay.
I'm really disappointed I lost out on Miami. I was hoping they would slide through to the next round. I love that pick, John. I'm jealous of that one. I agree with you.
Well, you can't have it. Okay.
I know that my snake draft. See, I thought it was going to work out to my advantage, and then here you are with the number 4 pick, getting a team I really wanted in Miami. That one stung because Mark Fletcher. He's not just one of the best running backs in the ACC. He's one of the best running backs in the country. You mentioned Malachi Tony, the dynamic wide receiver. They also brought in that transfer at wide receiver from Duke, Cooper Barkate. He was like the
Yeah.
he was like the under the radar guy with the Darian Mensah package, but he's
Uh-huh.
not really under the radar at all. This is a 1,000-yard receiver type player we're talking about. So, I mean, the thing with Miami is like they don't necessarily get the volume of transfers. They're not bringing in 20, 30, 40 transfers
Hmm.
like Lane Kiffin does, but man, they pack some punch when they get somebody in the portal. They're getting a 4 or 5 star portal guy. They got a dozen transfers this offseason, and I feel like most of them are high impact guys. You combine that with what they have back, and I think you can look at it 2 ways. Like, is being in the ACC an advantage or disadvantage? Disadvantage because the ACC is probably only going to get 1 or maybe 2 bids. That's probably about it. But I think you only need to get 1 or 2 bids for Miami to get in this year. I mean, heck, this year they didn't win the conference championship, and the committee was like, no, we got to have Miami in here. So, yeah, I think they're going to get into the playoff, or they're at least they're a better bet than anybody else from the ACC to get in. They're the top dog in the ACC, and yeah, I think they're going to have a really nice roster and potentially an upgrade at quarterback. So I hate losing Miami off the board. LSU would have been in my top 12, no doubt. I think you value LSU maybe a little bit more than I do. I know how good Lane has been with this portal stuff, the portal king madness here. He does it better than anybody. But when I see that many new players come in, I know he's hit the portal hard at Ole Miss, but this is just a brand new roster, and I do have to wonder a little bit how that's all going to assimilate. Plus, you have Sam Levitt, the quarterback, coming off of an injury, and he is going to be stepping up in the caliber of defense he's facing from Big 12 to SEC. So I like LSU. Don't like them quite as much as you do, but Miami stings losing them.
Well, and another thing I like about Miami, Blake, is I know it lost a lot on defense, But when I look at its schedule, I don't see many teams there capable of outscoring them. I mean, they can beat you 44-41 if they need to.
All right, my next two picks. I'm not getting too clever or creative here, John. I'm still reeling from losing Miami off the board, but I'm going to take what I think is maybe just the two best teams available at this point. Nothing fancy. I think the two best bets available at this point would be Georgia and Indiana. Georgia, I don't love them, but I like them. They bring back Gunnar Stockton. They have that 2024 recruiting class that was highly, highly regarded. Most of those guys that signed in that class, which included a lot of top 100 prospects, they're still around in the program. They're going to be third-year guys now. So this is really their time to shine. You know, I look at that third season as when you need to be getting reward off your portal off your recruiting classes. If you're still going to do it the old method of sign and develop the way Georgia is, they're not doing the portal thing. They're doing the sign and develop way. Well, this year 3 for recruit is key, and that's when Georgia had that recruiting class with all those top 100 prospects. Those are going to be third-year guys now. You have Gunnar Stockton back, so there are other teams I like better, but all those teams are already gone. So I think Georgia is maybe the best one out there at this point. And then I'm going to take Indiana, the team you thought about, John. Going back to back, sure, that's tough. But do I like anyone more than Indiana? I don't think so. And they got Josh Hoover coming in, who is high stat man, throws for a lot of yards coming from the Big 12. I think he's going to pair nicely with Curt Cignetti. I think Cignetti might be able to cut down on some of Hoover's interceptions. He does throw a few too many interceptions, or at least he did at TCU. But you're talking about an experienced quarterback who's accustomed to having a lot on his shoulders, and we've seen what Cignetti has done, with those veteran transfers 2 years in a row now. He's been to the playoff with veteran transfer quarterbacks. So I think at this stage of the draft, I don't think I can do much better than Indiana. So add Georgia and Indiana to my lineup.
That's really a coaching pick because I think right now, if you ask somebody who are the two best coaches in college football, they would say they've been saying Kirby Smart ever since Nick Saban left. But now Kirk Cignetti, with what he did in this turnaround, those are the top two coaches. So, you can't go wrong there. I just didn't think Georgia helped itself enough in the portal. Thought
I agree with
Indiana
you.
did.
Yeah.
And I like Georgia to make the playoff, but I just don't know if it could advance that far. But you do make a good point with how well it's recruited. Retention rate is pretty good with good players. So this figures to be a better team. I just don't know about the receivers. I mean, Georgia lost about 4 receivers. Zachariah Branch was the main guy, but I just don't know who's going to get that receiving yardage, who's going to take the pressure off a ground game, which should be very, very good. Maybe the best Georgia's had in a while. They've got some depth at running back, and their offensive line's pretty good. So yeah, I had both those teams up really high. They would have been my next two picks, in fact.
And it gets hard at this point, doesn't it, John? Because it's like we can sit here, and I agree with you about Georgia. I wish they would have. I think they should have done more in the portal. And if I'm serious about them winning the national championship, I think you're spot on. Like I think they probably need a little bit more wide receiver punch than what I feel like they have. But this is where it gets tough after you get down past about 5 teams. I think those teams in that like 6 to say 15 range, you can make a great case for anybody 1 through 16 and 1 through 15, 16, maybe even 20. You could make a case for a lot of those teams being playoff teams. But the difference between playoff team and national championship, that's when you start to kind of pick out some of the flaws here. And so I'm with you. And again, that's why I say, like, I like Georgia. I don't love Georgia, but at this stage in the draft, it does get a little bit tough.
Yeah. One thing I think about on this, when I look at teams that can make a playoff, are schedules. And You think about a team has to play if it plays a really tough schedule and it makes a playoff, it's conditioned to playing close, tough games. That would be an advantage. But I also think it's an advantage if you've played a light schedule and made the playoffs because you're probably healthier. Indiana was a really healthy team. I know it lost a really good defensive lineman in the oddest of ways in celebrating a win. But other than that, I just don't remember the Hoosiers having that many injuries. Do you?
No, they were pretty healthy. Yeah,
Those
they avoided the catastrophic injuries pretty well.
when you're talking about playing a 16-team schedule, 16-game schedule now, man, that's challenging. So yeah, all right, this is hard now. So I'm gonna go with Texas Tech.
Okay. They said they were doubling down this offseason, John. You heard it from the billionaire booster. Cody Campbell said they're doubling down. So I guess he's
Yeah, crank up another oil rig, guys. We're gonna win this thing. Landman, here we come. Texas Tech lost a lot of defense, just as Miami did. But I'd also, again, like Miami, I think it upgraded itself with the quarterback. I really like Brendan Sorsby that was at Cincinnati. It's got a good running back in Cameron Dickey. I look at its schedule; it'll be favored in every game. I could see it going unbeaten. I really could. I think its quarterback was hurt when it lost to Arizona State. In fact, this past year. Anyway, so I'll take Texas Tech first. Now, this is a real tough one. I guess I'm going with Oregon.
with a lot of gusto, I can tell.
Well, I mean, I thought Oregon had a lot of talent this year, and then I watched it against Indiana, and I was like, well.
That's a tough thing about Oregon, isn't it? Is 2 years in a row, we both thought they had really good teams, and then 2 years in a row, their last game of the season, they didn't just lose, they got blown out, and it makes you just sort of look back on the whole season like, maybe they weren't as good as I thought. But both years they lost to the eventual national champion. 2 years ago, they went undefeated in the regular season. Ohio State blows them out in the playoff, and then this year, Indiana blows them out in the playoffs. I really don't know what to make of that. Like, was Oregon not that good? Was it just a case of going up against the national champion, and Oregon was pretty good? I don't totally know what to think. I mean, I think they're pretty good, but how do they go from pretty good to national champion?
Well, see, I'm betting. I look at three things there with Oregon. I know it's got Nike in its corner, no shortage of cash for NIL payoffs. Dan Lanning is 48-8. Now they're going to be talking about him the way they were Ryan Day at Ohio State pretty soon. Like, well, yeah, he won a lot of games, but he won't win you a championship. But I think he's a really good coach. I like what he's done there. The record speaks for itself. So you got the coach, you got the money, and I think you got the quarterback. I like Dante Moore. So, and I think the schedule is manageable. So I wouldn't be surprised at all Oregon making the playoff. I think at this point, when we're picking teams we think have a good shot to make the playoff, and then hope they turn into something special that maybe we can't foresee right now.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. You hope you're in the dance, and then whatever else happens from there, you can't be too greedy with it at this stage of the draft. All right, so I have two more, John, and take it with a grain of salt because we're now at picks 10, 11, and 12 overall. So I know these teams have some warts; they're not perfect, but here we go. Texas A&M. Texas A&M looked so good through about 2 months of the season, and even into November. They early November they blew out Missouri on the road, and then they had that scare from South Carolina. It's like, okay, maybe that was just a one-off. Maybe it was, just didn't show up for an 11 a.m. kickoff there, but they survived and rallied and won. But then they lost to Texas, didn't look good in that game, and then at home against Miami. And I know Miami goes on to be the national runner-up, and Texas A&M had a shot to win right there. They were inside the 10-yard line and could have scored a touchdown and won the game. Marcel Reed threw an interception. So they were right there with the team that wound up being the national runner-up. But when you lose back-to-back games to finish the season, it does make you start to reevaluate the season that was. But at this stage in the draft, you're talking about a team that was in the playoff this past year. They bring back Marcel Reed. So, I like teams with where you at least know who's going to be the quarterback, and you kind of have a general expectation there. So I'll go with A&M, and then with my final pick, oh boy, uh, let's see who's still out there: Alabama, Oklahoma, Southern Cal, Ole Miss. As we conduct this draft, we don't know whether Trinidad Chambliss is going to be granted a 6-year of eligibility or not. I would love to know if he's going to be Ole Miss's quarterback. That might help me here. All right, how about a flyer a little bit here, John? I'll take Southern Cal. I'm not a huge
Well,
believer.
you just got me back from Miami.
Okay, that's who you were thinking with your last pick.
I almost took Southern Cal on my previous pick, but I thought Blake won't take them.
Yeah, I almost didn't, because I can come up with more reasons why this is a bad pick than why it's a good one. Really, the only reason I'm taking this is, I don't love any of those teams left as far as national championship teams, and Southern Cal. What I like least for Southern Cal is the schedule. I mean, they're going to have to play Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, and Washington. So I would say all the other best teams in the Big Ten, USC has to play them all. I mean, that's pretty much the who's who of the Big Ten, right? You got Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, Penn State, Washington. I guess they don't play Michigan, but that's about the only big dog in the Big Ten that they're missing out of there. So I don't love the schedule situation. At least they get Oregon and Ohio State at home. So maybe if they could split those two, lose one other one, get to 10-2, the talent's going to be there. The question is, can Gary Patterson solve the defense, right? That was the high-profile defensive coordinator hire Lincoln Riley made. Now, I'm a little skeptical of that. I think when you have as many years on your resume as Lincoln Riley has, and you've never really had a good defense, and you just go through one coordinator after another. I mean, this is now the fourth defensive coordinator Lincoln Riley's worked with, and none of them have ever been able to produce an elite defense for him. And really, it's pretty rare that they even have a good defense. Usually they're average at best on defense. So again, there's a lot of reasons to not like this pick or to question it, but I think their offense is going to be pretty good. And at this stage in the draft, I think they're probably as good as anybody.
Yeah, I like Southern Cal, but it's one of those teams that I always kind of like, because I always think it's got so much talent. It really does. I think that program has underachieved as much as anybody in the last, since Pete Carroll. I just have never watched a Southern Cal team play and thought, well, they just don't have much talent. For some reason, they don't get motivated. They throw away games, and I don't mean throw games. They just throw them away with mistakes, and they're inconsistent. But when you catch Southern Cal on a really good day, they really look like right out of Hollywood casting for a national champion. And so, yeah, I definitely like that pick. Texas A&M is another team, though, that I always think will do better. And there's such a making the playoff should kind of put to rest that stigma that accompanies the Aggies. I guess they last won a national title in the 1930s or something, but you just have that something will go wrong with them, that they just won't come through. In the Miami game, watching that Miami game, even though A&M almost could have won it right there at the end, as I'm watching that game, I'm thinking Miami's going to win this. And you get in those kind of close games with A&M, and you just have that feeling, well, the Aggies will blow it. They just won't. But I think Mike Elko's done a nice job. Marcel Reed gets more consistent.
You know what's
They
interesting, John, is a couple weeks ago on this podcast, I said A&M is overrated in those two early rankings, and here I am picking them for one of my national championship picks. But I do think they're a little bit overrated. But it's as you said, they just went to the playoff this year. They're bringing their quarterback back. Mike Elko's done about as well as anybody could have hoped for, I think, at College Station through 2 seasons. I mean, he got him into the playoff in year 2. Sure, it would have been nice to win a game or two, but I think he's ahead of the schedule a little bit. You know, if you would have said the day they hired him, hey, he's going to be in the playoff year 2, I think most Aggie fans would have taken that. I don't know. It's hard for me to totally buy in when their entire last season was all hinged on them beating Notre Dame on the road in a game that easily could have gone the other way. That was really their one marquee win. But again, at this stage of the draft, everybody's got a few warts, which leaves us with your final pick. So
yeah, before making that, I do want to point out something in looking forward. I think it would be, let's don't ever look back. If you said something 2 weeks ago, if you said A&M's horrible, they'll never make the playoff again. 2 weeks later, things change. And I always try to keep that in mind. That's what I thought back then, but now I've changed my mind.
The interesting thing is I haven't really changed my mind, John. I still think they're overrated in some of those early polls. But
well,
desperate
no,
times call for desperate picks.
Yeah, man. Who am I going to pick?
All right, I'll go over for our listeners' benefit, John. I'll go over some of the options here that you have, unless you're going to go completely off.
No, I've got all my options right here in front of me.
Well, I didn't say for your benefit. I said for the listeners' benefit.
I'm sorry. I don't care.
Yeah. Theoretically, some people do listen to this podcast. So,
I've completely forgot that. I'm sorry. I just thought we were talking.
For the listeners' benefit, some of the teams still available include Alabama and Oklahoma, 2 teams that met in the playoff this past year. Alabama won that game. The less said, the better about what happened in Pasadena. After that, Michigan with Bryce Underwood back and new coach Kyle Whittingham still on the board. Ole Miss still on the board. As I mentioned, it would be nice to know here if Trinidad Chambliss was going to be their quarterback or not. Those are some of the teams still available, unless you're going to pick somebody else, John, to completely surprise me, which I would welcome at this stage. You're not going to do it, are you? You're not going to completely surprise me.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Dramatic pause for effect. I'm going.
You don't even know where to take this.
I'm going to pick Utah.
Utah.
Mm-hmm.
What is the rationale?
I think they have 2 good quarterbacks. They usually recruit linemen pretty well.
And you just don't like any of those other teams that I mentioned off that were still available?
I don't like Alabama and Oklahoma. I wish they hadn't been in the last playoff. Michigan, I was tempted to pick Michigan.
And then you saw them play Texas in a bowl game?
No, it just popped into my head because you did that. It was a strategic move on your part. You're so good at manipulating people. You said, well, might surprise me here. So when you said that, I need to surprise him. And I surprised you by picking Utah.
Mm-hmm. It's like last year when you picked Iowa.
Yeah, see.
Which, hey, Iowa was a little better than I thought they'd be. That didn't end up being a terrible pick. I mean, ask Vanderbilt what the chunk of Iowa.
They lost all those close games, man. They were in every game. They could have.
Well, that's Iowa for you. That is.
Well, no, but I mean,
good and the bad when it comes to Iowa.
They scored a couple of touchdowns. Okay, we're not used to seeing that. Completed a few passes. No, so I just, again, you manipulated me, and I'm just a little too stupid, I guess. And so there I go, feeling as though.
Well, you were onto something there with Utah, John, with Devin Dampier, the quarterback coming back. If you got a quarterback, you got a chance. And he's he looked pretty good last year for them. So, and maybe you could make the argument that Kyle Whittingham was holding them back, and they needed some fresh blood to make the coaching change
I'm
there. I don't know. You were kind of like on the hint of a
I'm
case.
trying to think of the
Devin
I'm trying to
Dampier looked
think of
really
the
good, the quarterback at the end of last season.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the name of the coach. That's a bad sign when you can't think of the name of the coach that you picked to win the national title. Not a good sign.
The thing of it is, John, I think the rules should be much like looking in the rearview mirror. If you don't know the name of the coach, you probably shouldn't point out that you don't know the, the name of the coach of the team you're picking to win the
I know
national
I'm my own worst enemy though.
Yeah, it's Morgan Scaly is their coach, who they promoted from within
Could be
to
Morgan Stanley.
could be Morgan Freeman for all you know. But hey, they're on your list of teams to win the national championship. All right, so here's the official lineup, John. Hopefully, maybe we've found the national championship among these 12, or who knows? Maybe it'll be a season unlike any other, and someone will come out of nowhere to win the national championship. But your 6 are Texas, Miami, LSU, Texas Tech, Oregon, and Utah. So you have 2 SEC teams on your roster of 6 teams, John. My roster of 6 is Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Southern Cal. So I also have 2 SEC teams on my roster. Isn't that kind of interesting that in a 12-team draft of national championship potential, we only took 4 SEC teams? And it sort of speaks to the power shift in the sport going toward the Big Ten. And I also think it sort of speaks to maybe we see a lot of teams in the SEC where I think, yeah, they could go 9-3. But how many teams in the SEC do I think could really, truly contend for a national title? I think the list is probably about 4 or 5. And I think they
Okay.
showed up in this draft.
If you could pick one more team,
A bonus pick.
if you had a bonus pick, I would pick Ole Miss with the thought Trinidad Chambliss could win his court case. I think he will. I'll favor his winning. If I had to bet on it, I'd say he wins. And he returns at quarterback. He might be the best player in college football.
Okay. No, yeah, I think Ole Miss becomes a lot more appealing if you know he's playing it as a quarterback. They brought in a lot of transfers, as always, even though Lane left and they got Pete Golding as the coach now. They still brought in a ton of transfers, so it depends how much those guys hit. Who else would I take? I'm not going to take Michigan. I don't think Bryce Underwood's a national championship quarterback. I really don't. And Kyle Whittingham, for as good of a coach as he's been, he was an excellent coach at Utah. Doesn't have a great track record as far as developing elite quarterbacks. So I'm going to skip on Michigan. I'm going to skip on anybody else from the Big 12 or the ACC because I think we've taken all the teams with national championship potential there. BYU is a team I like with playoff potential, but national championship potential, no. So it needs to be someone from the SEC. That sort of leaves me looking at who? Alabama, Oklahoma. I'd take a flyer on Alabama, I guess, if I had a bonus team and you've taken Ole Miss. I know you're shaking your head, John, but who else am I supposed to take at this stage? I know there's about 10 questions you have with Alabama, and they're all fair questions, starting with who's going to be the quarterback and how good's he going to be. I get it. Who else am I supposed to take at this point? You suckered me in here. You said I manipulate you. You suckered me in by making me pick a bonus team here that I didn't want.
Well, that's one of the tricks I do with people is I try to convince them that they're manipulating me when I'm actually manipulating them. It's very strategic.
Okay. Well, we won't manipulate the listener tuning
We
in
won't?
any longer. Not any longer.
Why? We can't do that? Oh, okay.
Until next week. Thanks for listening to this edition of SEC Football Unfiltered.